I remember when my dad gave me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was, I think, 16 or 17, and I had no idea what to do with it. I literally let it sit on the bookshelf for like 8 years. I became an accidental landlord through this process, just from traveling so much and having to rent out my house. I heard about people buying houses with no money down, buying on seller finance, taking over mortgages, creating notes. It was fascinating. Now we have a 6-month-old son this year, so that really changed my strategy. It made me evaluate what my long-term goals are.
It's pretty easy to go on autopilot. You do need to be a responsible steward of the money that you do make.
I quit my job thinking I'm going to go all in real estate. And
welcome to the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast, where we dive deep into the intersection of career, family, and finances. Learn the mindsets, tips, and strategies to help you on your personal journey to build a life of abundance and purpose for you and your family. Now here's your host, Aleman.
Welcome back to another episode of the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Anastassia Aleman. Anastassia is a CPA turned full-time entrepreneur. She used her strong financial background to build out a portfolio of cash-flowing rentals. In addition to buying properties the traditional way, she also taught herself how to find off-market deals by going direct to sellers. We talked through some of her specific deal structures and the creative finance strategies she used to enhance her cash flow and even provide opportunities to new home buyers. Anastassia is also a financial coach, working with people to create customized plans to help them navigate their financial lives. This interview is full of tactical advice and wisdom. Without further ado, let's get into it. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast. Today, I'm joined by my friend and fellow investor, Anastassia Aleman. Anastassia and I met through a mastermind that we're both in. She is an incredibly accomplished real estate investor and a CPA who has recently gone the entrepreneurial route. She recently started a coaching program as well, and I'm here to unpack all of that with you and would love for you to add anything else to your intro that I may have missed.
thanks, Aaron. Glad to be here. My background is, as Aaron mentioned, I'm a CPA. I worked in public accounting for 8 years. I've been doing real estate about 6 years now. And we transitioned now to doing coaching. So that's actually something I'm passionate about. This is a passion project that I'm pursuing. And yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. So yeah, let's maybe go a bit chronologically through some of your background. So your professional career up until when you left your job was you were working in public accounting, right? As a CPA?
Yeah,
is that right?
Straight out of college, I got a full-time offer with KPMG, one of the accounting firms, and I worked there for 8 years. Realized maybe 3 or 4 years in that I didn't quite love accounting personally. I should have gone the finance route. So I was looking for lateral movement or try to do something else. And at the time, I was actually doing partnership work. So I was doing fully partnership taxation. That's all I did for 3 years. And then I switched and started doing mergers and acquisitions work. It was a little bit more interesting. I actually got to travel a lot. I traveled for 18 months at one point. That's how I met my husband during that time. And now moved to Charlotte. I was living in Birmingham, Alabama at the time. And now I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. Got into real estate accidentally. I became an accidental landlord through this process, just from traveling so much and having to rent out my house. Loved it. Had the best first tenant I think anybody can ask for. I actually haven't had a tenant that good since then, but that just gave me the first real estate experience and I was hooked. So ever since then, we just started getting more and more into real estate. And now here I am.
Accidental landlord is one of the best ways to get into it, right? So you kept a primary house that you bought and you moved and then you rented it?
Yeah,
is that what
so
happened?
I was living in my primary house. And like I said, I made a job transition and I started traveling, which I never had to travel in my prior position. So I started traveling literally 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, and it lasted for 18 months. But if I think about a month into it, I realized that I need to rent my house or do something because I'm not there. I was making a triangle where I was going from Alabama to North Carolina to Delaware, back to Alabama to North Carolina. My house was just sitting empty and I was paying a mortgage and I realized that I need to do something. I listed it on Zillow, had no idea what I was doing. I think at the time I had some older neighbors. They were so sweet and I told them I'm going to start traveling and I'm not going to be there. So I'm going to rent out my house. They literally did the showings for me. So some of the top applicants that wanted to view the house, my neighbors were showing them into the house and just walking them around, letting them look at it. And I was doing all of this remotely. That was my first, I'll say, out of state experience of being an accidental landlord, and went well, got a tenant that paid in full for the entire year. Again, that's never happened in my life since then. And yeah, that's how I got into it.
No, I love it. As I'm very passionate about long distance real estate investing, and I also have self-managed properties. We self-manage 6 out of our 8 rental properties, and they're all out of state. But I think the way you explain, where it's like you learn just by trying, right? Like you learn how to put out the Zillow listings, you learn how to manage communications with the tenants. Like you said, you involved your neighbors, like people on the ground that you trust. I think being scrappy and resourceful like that, especially at the beginning, great way to learn the skills. And then if that didn't scare you off, it sounds like it had the opposite effect, where you liked it. You started to see how that could fit into your future and your family's future. And I happen to know that you took it because of your financial background and your ability to understand easily numbers and complex deals. You didn't necessarily stick with a traditional, let me go buy standard buy and hold rentals, right? Like you went on the creative finance route. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Ever since that first house, we actually ended up selling it, I think back in 2020. And we used the proceeds. We actually bought our first rental property, and that rental property we actually lived in. We tried to live, at the top, rehab the bottom and rent out the bottom. Didn't quite go as planned. So we ended up buying another house a month later. That's a whole nother story. But once we bought the next house, we were just using the strategy of, at the time, my husband and I, we weren't married. So he would buy a house, I would buy a house, and we were moving about 1 to 2 years on average, except for that 1 month stint. That was an accident. But we realized quickly that we're going to have to move multiple times. This is a hassle. So I made him move 4 times in 3 years. After that, he told me, this is the max. We're getting married. We're getting our forever house or for a little while house. And we didn't want to continue that strategy, but that was how we started out. And our goal was to buy traditional 1 or 2 houses a year while we're working at our jobs. And we just quickly realized that this is not really working fast enough. And as some properties it started out with $300-$400 a month cash flow. So we're like, okay, we're going to have a bunch of these before we actually can make an exit out of our job. So it wasn't quite the best strategy. And we quickly realized with the 15-20% down payments on some of these, you're going to quickly run out of money. So that's when I started attending more meetups, starting meeting people, and I started hearing about people here locally in Charlotte that are doing things that are more creative. So I got really interested. I heard about people buying houses with no money down, buying on seller finance, taking over mortgages, creating notes. It was fascinating. So I started learning more. And ever since then, I was hooked. And I quickly realized I no longer need a job, because for the longest, I had the mindset, like, I have to keep my job in order to buy more real estate. And then once I started meeting people that actually didn't have a job, that changed my mindset. And then I just realized all the possibilities that are out there. And my job wasn't something I stayed for just in order to buy properties in the long term.
Yeah, there's a bit of a barrier that everyone hits, whether it's after their first house that they buy traditionally, or whether it's after their 5th or 6th. But at some point you run out of money, right? Even if you make a nice, healthy salary and you don't have kids, like you can only save $40,000 or $50,000 at a time, so many times in a row. Like that, it takes a lot of active effort. You either need to be making a ton of money in your W-2 or living a completely frugal lifestyle. And it's hard to repeat that and scale it without decades of time, which, like, part of the strategy that we teach in our academy is like, it's okay to be the slow and patient route and stick with your W-2 if that's what you want. Some people have careers that they're very invested in and that they enjoy. And that approach absolutely works. But yeah, if you want to accelerate or move quicker, or if you're trying to use it to get out of your job for whatever reason, spending more time with your family, doing things, having an entrepreneurial pursuit, starting your own business, there's a lot of reasons that it could make sense to leave your job. And if so, then having some of these strategies like creative finance make a big difference. But I think a lot of people, because it's so unfamiliar and it's not as easy to understand as just getting a mortgage and putting a down payment and moving in, people are maybe afraid to get into it. So obviously you had a background in numbers, and you probably didn't have a hard time understanding some of these deals. But like, how was the learning curve at the beginning when you started to try and learn all these different types of creative finance?
I would say for me, the learning curve really wasn't in the deal structure, or I guess differentiating just from the traditional means, because how we started out was just literally on the market through a realtor, like conventional financing. So we were doing everything, the regular standard way. But I would say with the creative finance, it is creative. So it's whatever you make of it. And I think the opportunities are endless. So that really wasn't what was different, but we ended up going directly to the seller. So we were doing off-market marketing. And I realized quickly that I'm not a great negotiator and I don't maybe have the best sales skills. So I would say that was really the most challenging part, is just trying to find the deals, find great deals. Obviously, everybody wants it, and that's a skill in itself. And then just being able to negotiate some of these transactions, I think is just negotiation skills is really what it comes down to.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think let's talk about a couple of the differences between just like standard buy and hold investing that you do on the side versus kind of what you started to do, which is build out an operation, right? So in my world, my approach currently, we have agents in the markets that we're in. They're our deal finders. We don't do a lot of off-market stuff unless they're pocket listings that come from those agents. We either self-manage or we have property managers there. So we leverage our team to build it in a way that is pretty easy to maintain for us. Our pitch in our academy is that you can do it in 20 minutes a day, but there's no way you can do a off-market operation in 20 minutes a day, right? It turns more into an actual business. You got to put money into the marketing. Obviously, you hope that marketing yields incoming leads. You have to work those leads. You have to be on point and follow up, manage all these different campaigns. So yeah, can you tell us, so it sounds like you started with a more traditional approach, but then you moved towards that. What did you like? You already said you didn't like the negotiating and the sales part, but are there parts of building out that business infrastructure that you did like, that you plan to continue?
I would say like some of our best deals were definitely off market. I guess with COVID, a lot of people saw the market go up and every deal was almost the deal. But definitely, like last year, for example, we were able to buy 2 properties off market, and those were some of the better deals that I was able to get compared to anything on the market personally. So I think just that aspect was definitely a benefit.
So you're saying basically it was worth it because you were able to get good deals out of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know I've talked to you in the past, like you had virtual assistants and some other people on your team that were helping you manage some of the leads and all of those different points in the marketing cycle. Did you like that, or was it overwhelming? Like to me, when I educated myself about what it takes to run an off-market operation, it fascinated me, but then the idea of actually doing it felt very overwhelming. What was that experience like when you had that fully humming?
So I would say, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago is when we first tried to go off market ourselves. And this was like on a smaller scale where I ended up getting a business partner, and then her and I did text messages. So that's how we started out. And we were both working a job. So we were doing this kind of after hours or on the side. And she would pick a day and she's, I'm going to send out messages and do a campaign today. And I'm going to respond to people that answer and see what leads come in. And then I would take a day. So we're splitting doing that. And we actually hired a VA to do some of the cold calling for us. But I quickly realized that if you don't give proper instructions, you're not going to get the results that you want. So I remember the first VA I ever hired couple years ago did not work out. And it was probably just lack of experience, lack of the direction that we provided her. And like I said, that didn't work out. So I actually didn't try another VA for a while. And then last year, I ended up hiring a VA full time. And that's when I made my transition to quit my job and then go all in real estate. So the VA I had last year was actually a great setup. She was recommended through an attorney here in Charlotte. And it was just perfect timing because I was looking for a way to exit. I was looking to see how am I going to make this happen. And the attorney was literally like, he had a VA that he recommended, and she ended up, I think he bought properties through her because she found them. She skip traced everything, found the lead, negotiated the deal, brought it to him. And she was like, this is a property. Do you want to buy it? And he took it from there, bought the house. And he was like, yeah, she's basically full service VA. So I actually didn't have to do any training. So that was nice. And then I did have to tailor her to how I run my numbers, how I want underwriting done, how I want her to phrase things, if I had to modify the script, if I didn't like certain things that they did. But my VA already came trained and she had a full team behind her where she actually had the callers, the people that send out the text messages, and she had systems and processes. She's definitely an integrator, but she was actually making some of the offers and doing the negotiations on my behalf. And then I was overseeing that. So that's how it became successful. But I think I really just lucked out by already having somebody with a full team that was trained that I didn't have to do a lot to bring them on.
Yeah, that sounds like the way to do it if you're going to. I'm sure you pay a little more for that, maybe whether it's a commission or monthly salary, whatever it is, versus if you went and hired overseas, you can get VAs at $4 or $5 an hour, depending on where you're hiring from, to do all the lead management and some of the follow-up work. But then you have to train each person, you have to manage them, you have to monitor all their KPIs, and that's exhausting from where I sit. It can be, if that's all you're doing, maybe it's manageable, but the fact that this person had a team that she managed and was already trained on that process and was already locking in deals for other people that you knew, that's half the battle, is like finding someone reputable that can actually get the job done. So you said it was about a year ago that you left your job,
I left my job May 1st, 2023. So I think I just celebrated 18 months.
Yeah, almost. Yeah. And so when you did that, your calculation was, hey, I'm going to go all in on off-market real estate and creative finance and use that to build up cash flow. Were you looking at wholesaling or flipping or any other ways to make active income, or was your goal to build out a stream of rentals?
So I think when we started out, we were doing the traditional route of just doing long-term rentals, and that was the plan. Then the first house that I mentioned, we bought in 2020 that we ended up only living in for a month. That actually turned into an Airbnb. I never planned to do Airbnb or short-term rentals. This is just something that happened purely by accident. And I had to figure out the fastest way to get this house rented and the best use for it. So that's what it ended up. And after that, we started transitioning some of the houses to seller financing them and helping people become homeowners. So that's more the route that I took. I wasn't planning on doing flipping. I actually hate doing anything that revolves rehab. We've had some bad experiences with contractors. I'm sure anybody in real estate has experienced that. So just definitely not something I enjoy or I have skills in to oversee projects and know the construction side of it. So I try to stay away from any repairs anytime, if that's possible. So part of that, like I said, the seller financing that we do, we actually don't handle like the repairs and maintenance because we're transitioning the house to sell it to the buyer that we find and then help them become a homeowner in the process. And that's really been the most satisfying strategy that we've done so far. So I've been trying to just figure out ways to do more of that.
So wait, can you explain how that works then? So you find a property where the seller is willing to seller finance to you, so they become the bank. You buy it, presumably with low money down on very favorable terms. And then you're saying you locate a buyer or someone who's looking and you connect the dots. Is that a wholesale transaction or how?
Yeah, and maybe I didn't make it too clear. So we have been on the side where we actually get a deal from the seller via seller finance, or like a combination of paying a little bit now versus the rest of it seller finance. But these are actually properties that I purchased conventionally. So I have the underlying mortgage on them. And then I'm turning around and doing a mortgage, like a wraparound mortgage to an end buyer. So I'm seller financing it. In this situation, I'm the bank and they're the buyer coming to me. So the property, two mortgages, if that makes sense, as a result.
Yes, you were doing this with rentals
Correct.
that you already
Yes.
own.
So we were taking some of the rentals that we owned that we thought maybe wasn't the best fit. And then we're trying to figure out ways, creative exits. And one of the creative exits we came up with this seller financing strategy that we can, help somebody become a homeowner in the process. And then we can still have that 30-year cash flow in the process, but at the same time, be actually helping someone versus just being a landlord.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Remote Real Estate Academy, the community I launched last year where I personally coach investors and empower them to buy rental properties anywhere in the United States. My business partner Nathan and I have a collective 15 years experience with over 20 cash flowing out-of-state rental properties. We provide a step-by-step playbook on how you can build your own portfolio and start accessing the life-changing benefits of real estate investing starting today. Go to remoterealestateacademy.com for more info, or better yet, shoot me an email at aaron@aaronamin.com with subject line RREA, and I'll throw in a special bonus for podcast listeners who join the Academy. Now let's get to the show.
Yeah, no, I like that. And it de-risks a little bit on your side. Obviously, you have to qualify the buyer and make sure they can handle the payments and have some sort of recourse. But I'm assuming if they default on the payments, you essentially would take the house back over, right?
Yeah,
That's your
that would be
recourse.
the worst case scenario. We would have to go through foreclosure. Haven't had to do that yet. They all say it's just a matter of time, but we really try to qualify the tenants, make sure that this is normally a family in the situations we've dealt with that's looking to buy a house and they can't qualify for traditional lending, or they have a large down payment that they're willing to make for whatever reason. They may be contractors. We actually dealt with a lot of that, or people that deal with in cash. So they have a lot of cash deposits coming in every month, a lot of cash deposits leaving out. They may be sending money to family overseas, different situations. And we've just been really able to take a look at what they're making sure that we qualify, to make sure they're actually qualified buyers, where a traditional lender like a bank would not, I would say, see that favorably and wouldn't approve them to get a loan.
Got it. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And like you said, you're providing an opportunity for people who would, I'm sure very much appreciate the opportunity to own a home, but couldn't otherwise get traditional financing. So that's got to feel good too, because you're getting your financial objective. I'm sure the terms you work out, it's not a charity thing. Like, you're still making money and you're giving someone an opportunity that might not have had it. But how do you, so if the bank won't qualify them, usually if they don't have a W-2 standard steady paycheck coming in, that's a reason that a lot of banks won't qualify. But how do you personally feel comfortable? What are the things you look for in a buyer? Is it character? Is it like, what are the factors you look for to make you feel comfortable giving a mortgage out to someone?
So it's the same criteria typically when we look for renters, for the most part, minus the down payment. So we're looking for somebody that can have at least 2.5 to 3 times the monthly payments as income per month. We want to see a good rental history. We want to see that they're employed, that they also have a good work history behind them. I ask for bank statements. So I'll take a look at their bank statements, make sure all the pay stubs check out. I actually go through and check each one, make sure everything matches. And then I take a look at kind of their spending habits. I take a look to see how much money they have coming in versus coming out. And like I said, for example, like one of our buyers, I remember when I looked at their bank statements, they had so much cash coming in. It was oppressive from all the jobs that they're doing. That fluctuates sometimes. But that particular person, for example, I remember they had a tax return, and because they're a business owner, they took a large write-off. So because on their tax return, they didn't have enough income that disqualified them from being able to buy a house. So they would have to do their taxes differently or wait 2 years in order to be able to have that tax return that would get approved by a traditional lender. That's an example, but I think it's a perfectly qualified buyer otherwise, because they had, and I didn't mention this, and I don't look at credit scores. It's just purely based on affordability, making sure that they're a good tenant, great work history, and then making sure that they have the funds to buy the house. And I typically require anywhere from 15 to 18% down payment on the house as well. So definitely higher than your traditional conventional loan. So that kind of gives me more security to do the transaction as well.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I might have to try that strategy out on a couple of the rentals we own that we have a lot of equity in. But you still have in those scenarios, you still have a conventional mortgage through a bank on the house, right? And so you're saying you're installing a second mortgage as a wrap.
That's correct.
Is that correct? And where did you go to learn how to execute that legally with all the right paperwork and all the right safeguards?
Great question. I feel like it was through meetups that I first heard about this strategy. And then I ended up just wanting to learn more, because through meetups and meeting people, I don't want to call everyone every time I have a question. So I actually joined the Pace Morby Sub-2 community, I think almost 2 years ago now. And that's where I go anytime I have questions. So the first time I actually did this paperwork, one of the questions I had was like, how do I handle my insurance? And that was a big topic. So I got on there, asked a couple of people that had experience with these transactions. They got on the phone with me. They told me exactly how I need to set up my insurance and the paperwork, what to put on the mortgagee clause, who's the name insured. So it was definitely a learning experience, but having that community and then just having my network here locally around Charlotte, I would say has definitely been a contributing factor to my success.
Yeah, no, there's a whole separate conversation I want to have a little bit later about just the role of community and mentors and coaches, and how people as investors can lean into networks like that without to your point, you don't want to just be calling somebody every time you have a tiny little question. So there's a way to navigate those type of environments. But I want to put a pin in that for a second because I want to finish talking about the rentals before we go into the coaching and community. But okay, so you explained how you do the seller finances on houses that you already owned. But now, where you currently sit, are you still looking for new rentals? Do you still have this off-market operation going on? Or like, what are your kind of current goals with rental?
I guess fast forward, ever since I quit my job last year, May 1st, 2023, now we have a 6-month-old son this year. So I'm blessed. And that really changed my strategy. I think it made me evaluate what my long-term goals are and what I actually enjoy. And it's funny because I quit my job thinking I'm going to go all in real estate, which I did for a couple of months, and then doing this operation, as you mentioned, and realizing that maybe I'm not the best negotiator, maybe realizing that this is not something I truly enjoy, is doing like the direct to seller outreach. This really just made me go back and evaluate what is it that I enjoy to do and what do I want to do long term. And through the whole real estate experience that I've had, I think the seller financing and being able to help people achieve homeownership, that's been the most satisfying piece, definitely. So I was just trying to figure out how can I do more of that. And I think toward the end of the year, I joined Action Academy with you. We've been able to have a couple of conversations, and I've told you some of my passions with finance and really trying to decide, no, I don't want to go back to work. I don't want to work for anybody. I definitely want to stay an entrepreneur. So it just caused me to go through a different direction and now pursue financial education and coaching, helping others become financially free, retire early, and build wealth. So that's what I'm working on right now in my most recent journey.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And yeah, we're in the Action Academy mastermind together. And one of the prevailing themes there is how do you set up you have your primary active income streams. I'm very reluctant to use the word passive, but you have your more passive income streams through rental properties. And the idea is that you've learned to fill both of those buckets. And over time, you build enough supplement / potentially replace what you need to make actively. But to your point, like you have this passion about helping people buy their first homes, build stronger financial foundations, all these things that you have a very broad experience through your background, your professional background, some of the stuff you've been able to accomplish with your own investments, and just the way that you can conceptualize someone's big picture financial situation. And yeah, taking that passion and then trying to turn it into a service where you can go out and work with people individually. It makes a ton of sense to me, right? There's a reason that I started doing coaching and offering that as a service too. It's because I wanted to encapsulate the experience that I had, which had made a huge impact on me and my family, and give that back and try and help other people achieve the same. So I'm a big fan of what you're putting together. I want to talk about so you mentioned you have a 6-month-old son and just how much of a change, obviously, I think anyone who's listened to this show knows I have 3 kids under the age of 3, including 8-month-old twins. And there are so many adjustments that you have to make when you become a parent, even just little things like trying to find time to catch up on admin work or answer emails. You feel like you're constantly falling behind. And when you're driven and ambitious and you're, in your case, like you're full on entrepreneur mode, I know how challenging that can be. But yeah, I just wonder if you maybe have any thoughts or insights on what that adjustment was like and then how you've adapted and continued to make progress.
Yeah, so last year was definitely a challenge because, right, I quit my job. I went all in real estate. I was like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And then we found out we're pregnant. So it was a little bit of an adjustment and change of plans because I planned my exit. Obviously, I calculated it. I was like, okay, this is how much we need. I have reserves in place. We have our cash flow. Everything was planned out except for that. So it's a little bit, I'd say I had to pause and reflect and just really, like I said, figure out what is it that I want to do long-term? Where do I see our family going? Our long-term goals. And through that process, I realized that I don't think I want to do real estate, definitely not off-market real estate right now. And maybe I should pivot and focus on my finance passion and being able to serve others in the process.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's not like all the skills that you built and you have all these different tools in your kit now. You know how to buy properties. You know how to do it creatively. You know how to sell properties. You know how to do that creatively. You know how to activate those, like the off-market deal finding, direct to seller. Those are very, I don't want to say difficult, because I don't think it's not that it's difficult. It's that it takes a lot of, you have to be all in on it, or else it's going to be really hard for it to succeed. But you know how to do it. You've proven to yourself that you can do that. And then now you're aligning how you're building your own business around the life you want to live. That's something I like to talk about on the show a lot, but it's like, we don't buy rentals because we're just super in love with like physical property. We buy it because of the outcome that we're trying to enable, which is different things to different people. Brian Lubin, the founder of Action Academy, his thing right now is traveling. He loves traveling. He loves these high class experiences, and he loves doing it. That's his passion. But like for me right now, my passion is being around my family, being able to see them in the morning, taking my kids to the pool. Like a good day for me is just when I feel like I've been able to accomplish what I need to at work, can fuel my passion through my side projects, and then I get a full amount of time with my family. Like that's a good day to me. So I think it's like being able to work with people to figure out what they're aiming for, and then help them enable it through whatever financial vehicle they need. Like I know you and I share that passion, right? And that's why you're starting to work with other people to help them figure that out. So with that said, what do you consider to be your like ideal person that you work with, and how do you think you can best help them?
So I think right now, my ideal client would be anywhere between 25 to 35. I think that's really the sweet spot. Anybody in their 20s, like that is an incredible opportunity to launch your financial future if you can really focus and get started in your 20s. But I would say even early 30s, that's really my target client, because I think I can best serve and help them see exponential growth if they focus and get started now. I'm focusing right now on women, primarily working with women. I don't discriminate against men, or I'm not opposed to working with men, but right now I'm just focused with working with women. Like I said, anywhere from 25 to 35 that are working in their corporate job. They're just traditionally heads down, focused at work. They're not really doing any outside investments. They're not necessarily in real estate, but they're open to it. I'm doing more financial broad education and helping them starting investing, not just, like I said, in real estate, but just broad overall. So if they're interested in real estate, I definitely can help them, point them in the right direction. But in the financial space, just helping them every month, take a look at their budget, take a look at their expenses, how much they're spending, how much they're saving, helping them come up with a plan so that way they have a plan for their future. They know how much they need to make that exit. So I'm really focused on early retirement and helping them transition and focus on finding their passion and being able to spend time with their friends and family. So that's what I'm currently doing right now, just being the coach in order to be able to help them set this plan, put it into action, and then point them in the right direction of who they need to talk to in order to make it happen.
I love that. So let me try and reflect some of that back to make sure I understood correctly. So you got people that are in their maybe mid 20s. They already are a few years into their professional careers, maybe out of college, probably followed a pretty traditional path. They got a paycheck coming in. They're like living their young adult life, but they probably have a somewhat narrow perspective on investments and finances. They're not like you and I, where we're thinking about all these different ways we could invest our money. And you're trying to reach them at a point where, hey, you have time on your side. You got 40, 50, 60 years ahead of earning potential, investing potential. And if they make a certain strategic decisions at that age, they have the ability to amplify and compound for decades to come. And then it sounds like you don't necessarily, it's not like, oh, you have to invest in real estate. You're going to work with them to try and figure out, based on what they're trying to do, are they trying to retire at 40? Are they comfortable working a W-2 for their entire career? You're going to custom tailor based on what they're trying to do to figure out what the right vehicle is. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, so we definitely take a look at where they're at right now, what their monthly budget is. We take a look at what investments they currently have. I help educate them on maybe any gaps or any issues that I see there, and then take a look at where they're trying to go, how much their ideal lifestyle is, and then come up with their magic number, the number that they need to work toward in order to hit and be able to be work optional if they choose to continue working or if they want to retire. So yeah, just taking a look at their whole financial picture overall.
Yeah, no, that sounds, it's funny to try and engage people when they don't already think like that, and try and, it's like partially educating, but also just trying to retool some of the way people think about money. Because I think it's pretty easy to go on autopilot and just be like, I got my paychecks coming in, I got my rent and my food going out and other expenses. And if there's a little extra in my bank account, great. If not, whatever. It's pretty easy to go on like that if you're not careful or privy to some of the options that are available to you. And I think about when I was in my 20s, I grew up around, my parents were very financially savvy. They were also real estate investors. I didn't take much interest in it when I was a teenager, but I definitely had it in my environment that like you do need to be a responsible steward of the money that you do make. But I totally recognize and understand that it is not easy to prioritize that when there's other things going on in your life. So how do you feel like when you are engaging with somebody who isn't thinking like that, what do you think are some of the ways that to get through to them the importance of investing and saving money and doing some of this like very forward thinking financial planning?
Yeah, so I would say a lot of the conversations I've had with people, they've been people that are already online and they're looking for whether they're part of the FIRE movement, the financially independent retire early movement, or if they're already looking at content related to other creators that are focused on the financial space. They're already kind of getting those seeds planted where they're seeing some content and the possibilities and what they should be doing. They might not know what to do, but they're hearing this. So they're already having a little bit of an interest in it. I think for somebody that's not even thinking about it, never heard of it, it's a little bit more difficult because I'm guilty of that, right? I remember when my dad gave me the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, when I was, I think, 16 or 17, and I had no idea what to do with it. I literally let it sit on the bookshelf for 8 years, and I didn't pick it up until way later in my 20s. So I'm trying to help somebody avoid doing that. And when I started working, ironically, I bought my first house at 21. So I did good there, but it was definitely not an intention to be a real estate investor or anything at that time. It just, I knew I was living in an apartment and I wanted to have a house. I knew that I should get a house, but not really, definitely not the mindset I have today. And through that, I would say I started working at my job. And like you said, it was just heads down on autopilot for years. And I wish I did a lot of things differently, right? But we can't go back. We can't dwell on the past. All we can do is move forward and then help others avoid making the same mistakes and just educate and teach people to make better decisions.
Yeah, I think you and I both study marketing to some extent, right? You have people who are problem aware, solution unaware. And basically the idea is it's hard to try and convince somebody that
when
they
they're
have
unaware.
a problem. Yeah. And also who are we to say if they have a problem or not? It's all relative. So I think there's a delicate balancing act when you're trying to reach out and connect with people who are receptive to that kind of coaching and guidance. It's definitely not easy to try and find people who are coachable and then also wanting that. But I think when you do find the right people that are interested in making that investment in themselves, there's nothing like the feeling of being able to help enable such a strong outcome for people that has potential to really change their life in a positive way. And when you talked about how you became a homeowner at 21, there's a concept I always think of called the lead domino. And it's how sometimes it's that first piece of massive action that really starts off the chain reaction that forms the rest of your life. And in that case, that one thing that was almost an accident for you, in your own words, that led to this whole path of exploring real estate. You guys created a strategy based on moving around and turning your houses into rentals. Like you said, you got exhausted from that after a few years because who wants to move that much? But those moves that you made early on completely altered the course of your guys' financial future. And so if you can reach somebody who's receptive to that message and you can have a conversation with them and they are open to it and they're willing to take a little bit of guidance or understand some perspective from you, just the impact of that is broad and powerful. So if I had to guess, that's why I know I'm passionate about coaching, and I'm pretty sure that's the same for you too.
I wish there was a way to reach people, like you said, that are unaware of a problem or that don't know that they need help yet. That would be my next step.
Yeah, it's a crowded space. Here's one topic I always think of is that sometimes when people hear the word coach, or especially on the internet, like people feel like have their guard up when they encounter people that are pitching themselves or positioning themselves as coach, because they think of it, especially people that aren't inclined to go towards services like that, they think of it as this like scam, like, oh, this person is just trying to impose some sort of philosophy on me. Or I think of most people, and I hope I'm wrong, but most people think of it as like, this isn't going to work, or why should I need that? But then people like you and I who invest in these mastermind programs and a lot in personal development feel the opposite, right? I love getting coached by others and mentored by others. I've always been that way, and I love giving back. So I guess my question to you is like, how has the experience been of navigating the general public and the internet with that identity of being a coach? What have you learned from that experience?
Yes, right now, I've been having conversations, kind of testing the market, figuring out what people need the most help with. I've been having a couple of conversations with potential clients, and honestly, some people are in very different positions financially. There are some people that are living paycheck to paycheck that really want to get started investing, and they want a financial coach. They want somebody to give them all that experience, that knowledge, but they're not in a position to pay for any of that, unfortunately. So just navigating the space and, like I said, try to find the ideal client that is able to pay for that education right now, that's working a W-2 job, but they definitely need guidance. They're looking for somebody to come in and help them get started, help them figure out what they need to do, where they should invest, how much they should invest. That's currently what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, and it's a lot of work. Just the discovery process of, like you said, getting out there in the open market and listening to people, asking questions and just being quiet and hearing what they say back, and what are the problems that they're having, what are the things they struggle with, what are they thinking about actively, what are they not thinking about actively. You learn so much, but then it definitely can be overwhelming when you try and think, okay, now that I had these 25 conversations and I heard all these different data points, What do we do with that? Like, you especially have such a broad skill set. There's so many things you could help people with, but what is the one thing that would be most impactful and useful to the people you're trying to reach? It's no easy puzzle. And when I started doing the real estate coaching, I did a similar thing where it was one-on-one, and I didn't have the academy or anything that we've started building now. And it was just over time and reaching people that I started seeing I'm solving the same problems over and over again. So now I'm going to build an offer that is in line with what I would normally want to teach anyway, but I'm going to create a really clear path from one place to another. It's fun. I know you and I have a lot of offline conversations about what it's like to build out coaching offers, but I think the whole industry of coaching, and especially when you meet people who are genuine about it and actually want to help others, is a little bit undervalued, just my personal opinion, right? And it is not a scam, despite how some people think of it. With that, I think we're coming up on time here, but I wanted to give you a chance to just let people know where they can reach out to you if they want to learn about coaching or if they want to have a conversation about real estate. And also just any final words you want to leave with the audience.
They can find me on Instagram, Financially Savvy Investor on Instagram.
Awesome. We'll make sure we plug that in the show notes. And yeah, if anybody, I can say personally, I've gotten to know Anastassia I think we've known each other about 8-9 months now, and you're a wonderful person. You care deeply about what you're doing. Very skilled. I highly recommend if you're looking for what she's putting out there, hit her up and get on a call with her. Thanks so much for coming on the show, and hopefully we'll have you back again.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Aaron. If anybody needs any help with real estate, whether it's taxes or you need help with their real estate properties, any creative solutions, or needs help with their finances, they can find me, like I said, at Financially Savvy Investor on Instagram. Thanks for having me on air. I appreciate it.
Thank you for making it to the end of today's episode. As you may know, podcasts are very difficult to grow organically. If you're getting value from today's episode, I'd deeply appreciate if you can take 30 seconds to leave my show a 5-star rating and review. This will go a long way to helping me reach more listeners just like you. Thank you so much in advance.